Yeah.
The thing is, I'm going to be in Europe until middle of next month. So I'm just kind of hanging out for it.
Holy.
Isn't that cool?
That's awesome.
Dude,
That's amazing.
I mean, it's I figure like I just turned 32.
Yeah.
I have always wanted to do like the digital nomad thing, at least for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I got 2 dogs at home, but besides that, I'm like, I got nothing to hold me down, so why not,
That's amazing, man. Yo, that's exactly what I want to do. Like my goal is to set up and structure everything here. So when I do, like my goal is to kind of leave maybe 1 month,
okay,
or 2 months per year somewhere,
totally,
wherever it may be.
And your business not fall apart.
And my business not fall apart, and I can check in online, right? Which is really easy to do. But yeah, so that would be the ideal, right? So right now, that's why I had that issue with like, I'm just building that up right now.
So that's actually,
yeah.
Dude, that's the email that I'm working on for you. So things have been hectic, so I appreciate you being patient.
I mean, you're having the time of your life. You're experiencing something like that is like once in a lifetime kind of thing, right?
Dude.
And
that's such the difference between like the European lifestyle and I'm assuming you Canadians are, pretty similar, but it's almost like we live to work and they work to live. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's it's very nuanced, man, but there's just a difference in like the way that you see things. And, for me, it's just like, well, don't get me wrong. I'm so passionate about my company and I want it to be, the #1 brand in the world, but ultimately that's not what defines me.
Right.
Like what defines me is like, the experiences that I have, the memories, like the love, like the friendships, like all that kind of stuff. And what I've noticed is like being able to take a step back and say, you know what, like I'm so focusing on my business, but I'm also focusing on like, me and my personal development. I end up being more inspired. And when I come back, it's just like, I've got so many other ideas and like things that I want to do as a result that it's almost like a requirement now. Like I have to like drink in more of those experiences. So highly encourage you to, don't get me wrong, I'm sure you have a great life out there, but if you can just like take a step back and do a little bit of traveling for an extended amount of time, it's worth it, dude. It's worth it.
Yeah, it sounds great. Like, yeah, that would be the ideal. And yeah, that's what I'm trying to go for right now. So
oh yeah.
But what's really interesting when you touched upon like kind of living life and like living for work, basically, right? Like that's, it kind of reminded me of why EatNMingle became such a big thing on meetup.com and how, right? And I'll talk about it when I kind of forgot it all about that part of it, but like right. I think that is one of the key, if not the key components of why everything worked out, and why it became so powerful and why people really loved it and how it grew so fast and like all these different things.
Awesome.
But yeah, I'll explain that in a little bit. Let me, hold on, give me a second.
Yeah, sure, dude.
Sorry, I just had to get some water.
Oh, no, you are fine.
Yeah.
All right, man. So, we are getting ready to go live.
Okay.
Before we, people can, or feel free to, like, they can join now. Definitely wanted to just kind of walk you through things before we got like into the meetup conversation. This is super low stress. You know what I mean?
Good.
Like you are, I think that you're a good guy, and I know that you got a ton of experience and a ton of knowledge. I think that both of our audiences can, find some value in, and it mostly just boils down to you just being yourself and, being honest and just talking about your experience, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I'm going to be asking questions, but you're interesting. So I might, veer off a little bit based off.
Please do. I would rather you do that. Yeah.
And so just kind of like free flow, and then, however it goes, and, then I'll send you a copy of it and we can like post it and all that good stuff. Cool.
That's awesome. I would love to do that. Yeah.
All right, dude. Sure. So let me, give me a second while I let everybody know that you were in, and then we can just like hop straight into it. All right.
All right. No problem.
Yeah. Dude, you got to get on LinkedIn.
Yeah, my stuff is I don't do any of that stuff.
I know. I know.
Yeah,
Trust me, I've been stalking you all week.
that's I take it as a compliment then, not a creepy thing. Yeah,
All right, dude. So, Ray, let's go ahead and get started, my brother.
let's do it, man.
I'm super excited to be chatting with you today. Just to give everybody who is, we don't have anybody in the group right now, but anybody that joins us later, Ray and I met through a mutual entrepreneur friend of ours, Paloma. Hi, Paloma, we love you. And have just been working to develop a relationship really. And the first time that you and I chatted, we talked about a whole bunch, like a gamut of things, right? In terms of the intersection of food and entrepreneurship and like passion and all that kind of stuff.
It
And
got deep.
we did get deep, didn't we?
It's the first time we spoke and met
Right,
online, like just
right.
kind of like this. It got deep, man.
Yeah, we got into the emotions.
That's what it's about. That's how you connect.
Absolutely. Well, see, and that's the thing, though, man. So the reason why Food Tribe started this group is, I mean, I would love for you to kind of tell me a little bit more about, your experience with this. But I just noticed that a lot of our partners, whether they're like clients or partners that like we want to work with, they kind of run into similar problems, right? In terms of like, getting their business off the ground, or, scaling their business, or, figuring out a way to revive it. And so, for me, it's just like, it's super important to have a community that I can rely on, that, when times are getting tough, you know what I mean? That have the ability or like the experience to say, you know what, T, this is hard, but I went through it, right? And this is what I learned. And so maybe you want to look at things this way. And, so having that community is super important, right? Which obviously is like super, I mean, I don't want to be too cliche, but that is the subject of our conversation today, right? Is, talking about like the power of communities, specifically as they relate to, online communities and offline communities, right? So super excited to be chatting with you, and would love for you to maybe just take a couple minutes to, introduce yourself, maybe talk to the audience about your background and tell us, about you. We want to know all about Ray.
All right, man. Do you want the short story long or the long story short? Because
Man. Well, I was going to say Lord of the Rings trilogy. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, okay, let's do it. You want director's cut, or you want? We can go there too. Okay, so I'm Chinese. You want to know? So I'll do I'll do the short version, just because I know when I want to learn about tips and things like that, I kind of usually fast forward
Totally.
where someone's telling me about their background origin story, because I
Totally.
really are more interested in what they're doing right now, right?
Yeah. So talk to us
Okay.
about, yeah, exactly. That's great.
So let me quickly just do like a Cole's Notes kind of thing. First of all, Terrence, do you know what the website meetup.com
I do know
is?
meetup.com. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. So for the people who don't know what it is, it's basically a website where people can host events based on their hobbies and interests, right? So I learned about this website when I was working in finance, and it was probably 6 months into my first career in finance. And the reason why I started the group, and it was called EatNMingle then as well. So I started this group in 2012 of May.
Nice.
And so I started with a couple of colleagues of mine, and we heard about Meetup.com because people were talking about it because they used it as a networking tool, right? So there's a lot of groups on Meetup.com for many different reasons. So if, for example, if you're interested in scuba diving or rock climbing, or you own a French bulldog, or you like knitting, photography, there's a group for everything. And especially if you live in like a bigger city, there's just more groups and more variety, right? So we started one based on food and dining, like basically dining out, right? So we had a shared interest and passion for food. So we always ate out during lunch together. And when we worked late hours, like until like 9 to 10 p.m., like we would go out for dinner as well.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So,
So we bonded over food.
right. And
Yeah.
so my question then is, because, to me, it sounds like, all right, so, before you launch Eat and Mingle in its current iteration, and we'll get there, right? Your origin story is you were working in what feels like the complete opposite of food, which is the finance world, right? And in order to, develop relationships or further develop your relationships with your colleagues, one of the things that you like to do was to go out and share a meal together. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was really an outlet where, well, it's twofold. The first one would be, it was to explore the passion of food, right? Our
Right.
passion for food. We just loved eating out. We loved trying new food. We worked on one like busy strip in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
So we would kind of like go to different places, right? Like
Uh-huh.
every time. But we would also always go to like one place for lunch. Eventually we started going to one place because we loved the people there, and they were just the nicest people. So we
Totally.
always went back because they knew us and we knew them, and we cultivated some sort of relationship. But yeah, it came from love. And also, secondly, it was for networking,
Mm.
right? Like, so just as how other like advisors were networking using like networking groups, we created one that was focused on food. But then we also like met a lot of really, really cool, interesting people.
Dude, and so that's where, I mean, I want to get to. I do have to take a quick minute to make a comment on, because you mentioned Toronto, and Toronto
Yes.
just had some really big news happen in the world of basketball. I don't know if you heard
Yeah,
about.
man. Okay,
Dude,
LA too. Hey, LA too. Hey, our cities are getting destroyed.
well, all right, slow
Yeah,
down. I'm a Laker guy, so LeBron coming to the Lakers. I'm happy. I want
I
to see what happens.
okay.
I want to see what happens. But my heart broke a little bit for DeMar DeRozan this past week. Poor guy.
Oh man, what
Poor
a
guy.
big, oh
Right?
my gosh. I can't believe that happened.
Yeah.
It, you know what? It was sort of like when, okay, so I was really into sidetrack. I was really into basketball when I was in elementary school, and I
Okay.
used to play every day in the summer with my friends.
Right.
My idol was Vince Carter, right?
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
you know what happened to Vince Carter. Okay, so
Totally.
this is how badly it affected me. When Vince Carter left the Raptors, I stopped playing basketball. Yeah.
Oh.
And then I never played basketball since.
Oh my well, dude, and that's the
Yeah.
hard part is like DeMar DeRozan, he sent out this it was an Instagram story,
That
and he
hurt.
basically said that there was no loyalty in this game, which was such a heartbreaker, you know what I mean, considering he was such a stand-up dude.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of, just kind of bearing us back to our conversation, right? It's just like oftentimes people forget that the digital interactions that we have, like the online stuff, like the stuff that like maybe we're not like you for example, you watched Vince Carter get traded away on television, right?
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
weren't there in person, but it had real effects on you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so like when we're talking about like these digital experiences, it's super important for us as individuals, as business owners, as restaurant professionals to understand, right, that the things that we do online that, might not necessarily seem like they're, front and center, they have repercussions, for other people to, kind of have to deal with, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want to, I'm playing you the world's smart.
Thanks
You know what I
so much.
mean?
Well, I mean, I left basketball once already. Like, I don't know how else I can leave basketball again. Like, maybe I don't play NBA like on my PlayStation anymore.
Yeah.
Like, that's the end of it. But yeah, it's heartbreaking. But like what you said, like in the digital age, something that I've realized while working with restaurants is that, most of the time, vast majority of the chefs I meet, right, and work with, their passion is about making food,
Totally.
right? Their passion is about spreading and sharing their love. And a lot of times it's attached to like their childhood or
Mhm.
their culture or some sort of memory, right? And
Right.
they just want to share that with other people. Their one number one issue, especially in big cities, is like the competition, right?
Right.
Obviously. And they didn't get into the business to market,
Totally.
right? They're not experts in marketing. So that is the issue, right? So it's sort of like, how do you get that sincerity, genuine like authentic like voice out there, right?
Okay.
Because there's so many restaurants that come and go, and there's a lot that are really great that for some reason just cannot hold on, right?
Right.
And then there's a lot of restaurants that are not that great that stay with us, right?
Right.
So so how do you why is that the case, right? So why does that happen? I would say a lot of times it's due to marketing, right?
Totally.
So
Totally.
if you don't get your word out there in the first, like, I would say 2 to 3 months, and people don't know about you by the first 2 or 3 months, it's sort of like a very, very steep uphill climb for a restaurant, right?
Interesting. Interesting. So, and you're right. You know, like the competition is super stiff, especially in like the larger metropolitan areas, right? Like where you're
Exactly.
not just having to deal with like marketing stuff. You're having to deal with like the high cost of food. You're having to deal with like employee turnover. You're having to deal with rent. All of those things are super complicated. And if you don't have that revenue stream coming in order to kind of, fund all of those different activities, getting your food into people's mouths, well, then you're gonna be dealing with some challenges, right? And
Exactly.
I think that you hit the nail on the head when you kind of talk about, the role of, restaurant owners and food and beverage professionals and, all that good stuff. And that most of the time, and not all the time, but most
Mhm.
of the time, that's what I love about, our industry, our business, is that there really is like an art to it, right? The art is like, the passion, the love that you put into like preparing your dishes to, creating this like really unique dining experience to, having that one-to-one connection with your customers. However, there is the science part, right? And the science part is running the business and covering marketing and making sure that you have like the processes, the workflows, all that good stuff, right? That can really like fund the artistic aspect of, running the restaurant business. So I would love to hear, a little bit more. I mean, you talked a little bit about, Eat Mingle and how it started. I would love to
Mhm.
hear about, where you guys are at now, and, just talk to us a little bit about, how you guys are working in the restaurant and hospitality industries.
Yeah, okay. So so EatNMingle started in 2012, like I said, and we were doing like, like 1 or 2 events like per month,
Okay.
right, between the three of us. Eventually, as we grew in our careers, we didn't have as much time to dedicate towards EatNMingle
Okay.
as a group. So my two colleagues kind of left the group. They didn't have enough time. I still was super passionate about it, obviously. So I carried on the torch and kind of grew with it.
Right.
The beauty of it, and I think one of the motivating factors of why I did that was because of my members. My members were so amazing. They gave me tremendous feedback, positive and negative, right? But I was able to use the negative and kind of grow the group in the right direction.
Hmm.
And then for all the positive feedback I was getting, it just made me want to continue,
Totally.
right? That was motivation, right?
Yeah.
So I was getting motivation from both negative and positive, but at the end of the day, everyone just enjoyed their experiences every time they came, right? So one of the things I wanted to mention was it came down to, I started working more closely with restaurants and chefs. So eventually what it became was, before we were just making reservations at restaurants.
Okay.
And then eventually I was able to cultivate some relationships around the city with the chefs. And we started making like curated menus, and our dining experiences became a little bit more special, right? So they're
Ah.
like one of a kind. Like if you were to visit this one restaurant today, your experience would be completely different if you experienced it as a Eat and Mingle event, right? So it's like, I love this restaurant, but then Eat and Mingle is doing an event, so like that's an amazing opportunity to try something new from the restaurant I love,
Totally.
right? But each event that we did, it was about like showcasing the brand's DNA, the brand's identity. So we wanted to make sure that all these dishes that they're offering were on their regular menu, or like a menu that's coming up. So a lot of times we did the like events where there's a sneak peek to like a new menu,
Coming up.
like a summer menu. We
Right.
have something called like Summerlicious, Winterlicious
Okay.
in Toronto. So it's
I like those.
like so it's like prefix. There's like 100 restaurants involved now, but it's like prefix. You can go on the website and then choose restaurants that
We've
have.
in LA, we've got a thing called Dine LA. and I think
Oh,
it's like
yeah, right. I heard it. Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Same
yeah,
thing,
very
right?
similar.
Yeah. So yeah, so it's sort of like, yeah, to preview that menu for their summerlicious, winterlicious. Restaurants love that kind of stuff, right?
Totally.
So we started curating events, and I started cultivating more relationships with these restaurateurs and chefs.
Right.
And eventually, my network of friends became like these guys in the industry, right?
Right.
And then, as that was going on, I was marketing myself on Instagram and Facebook and my website, right?
Right.
As EatNMingle, and I was just like doing what I do now, which is taking snaps of my food and posting it and writing a little bit about it. And then I also sometimes advertise for some of our events that were coming up,
Right.
right? But mostly it was like just different places I went to and ate at, right?
So, nope. Just you being passionate about food.
Exactly. That was my outlet, right? So yeah, so it grew to that point. The chefs and restaurateurs like kind of realized that, recognized that, and asked if I can help them in their social media marketing.
That's awesome.
So my first like time working with a restaurant was absolutely for free, and I worked with them for like 8 or 9 months before I realized it was like almost a full-time, part-time thing,
Right.
right? And then I was getting, at the same time, I was running my events, and I was getting more requests from restaurants if I could like maybe help them in their marketing efforts, right?
Okay.
So I'm running like a event platform, and then like a online marketing platform, and then I had my full-time finance job.
Oh, dude,
Right?
dude. Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
so that's where I was like, okay, well, I'm making this much in finance, and I'm making zero in my events, but then I can make some money in for the social media management, right? And I'm learning as I'm going, right? That's the biggest thing. I was learning as I was going, but after the years of managing my own stuff, right, and working within the industry, not as a chef or cook, but as like an influencer,
Right.
right?
Right.
Someone who did events and also worked with chefs, I felt like I had a lot of perspectives to kind of give feedback with, right?
Totally. That's
Yeah.
awesome, man.
So that was when I decided to quit my job. Once I had like secured like 3 or 4 restaurants that I would love to work with, and then I just jumped the gun, and then I started working Eat and Mingle, like online marketing.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome,
yeah,
man.
yeah. So
And
that's where we are today.
that's great. And that's a perfect example of exactly what we're talking about, right? It's like finding your tribe, finding your crew. And that's something that I've learned very recently. Like Food Tribe is, we're a young startup, and, we're doing a ton of growing. But, similarly to you, like I had a job where I was working in digital advertising and was doing that for several years. I was working for an ad network, doing ad sales, and for sure was making like great money, and
Mm-hmm.
doing Food Tribe on the side.
Mm-hmm.
But, the happiness gap wasn't necessarily there, right?
What did you not like about working in digital advertising at the time?
That's a great question. And I don't think that it wasn't the work, because I'm still doing a lot of what I was doing. I think that I just didn't, I wasn't always passionate about what I was doing.
Hmm.
Right. And so, just to kind of give you like an example, as a sales rep, oftentimes you're tasked with hitting a certain, financial number every year, right? Like you need to generate X amount of revenue. Doesn't matter how you get there, but you need to generate that number. And so,
Right.
if I wasn't able to close the deals and the clients that I was really passionate about, well, then, kind of, there were like the second tier clients and the third tier clients and the fourth tier clients. And I just noticed my happiness level started decreasing as the level of clients, started falling.
Yeah,
And
it's like a
so,
direct correlation.
dude, and so
Yeah.
what I love about your story is that, I mean, you said it best, right? You just started working with your buddies, and you're
Yeah.
doing it for free. And then before you know it, you're like, well, I need to make money off of this, and I can make money off of this. So why not make this leap, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just like, that's something that I wish for everybody, I wish everyone, especially people that work in the restaurant business. And I think that that's where, our conversation is going to be so good for the people that are watching later, is that being able to find the people that you actually want to serve, the people that, love what it is that you're doing, that are passionate about it, that have a good time. Like, that's so powerful, man. And in terms of like the happiness level, the happiness meter, like that's something that I wish everybody had, because I think that's
Right.
that's within reach for everyone, right? And so,
Yeah.
the restaurant owners that we're talking about, like, yes, they've got this amazing food, they've got this art, and if they did a little bit more research, a little bit more homework, they could identify that tribe, those individuals who love their food, who they want to try every new menu item that inspires like that next dish, like that's the kind of thing that I want for the clients that I work with, right? Is for them to be able to find the customers, the diners, the foodies that are not going to go on Yelp and blast them and write something silly that doesn't have anything to do with what the experience was like, but to find those eaters that are so passionate about whatever it is that they put out, that they just say, you know what, I'll see you here same time tomorrow at 7 p.m. because I love it. Right. Like, I love that.
To sidetrack, so I started like a side.
Mm-hmm.
No, one side. I started an apparel business, right?
Apparel.
Okay. Yeah. Not peril, like perish, like apparel clothing.
That's what I thought you said at first.
So I started an apparel business, right? The business model is we collaborate with restaurants to produce merchandise with them, right? But design in a way that's not typically their style.
Okay.
So our style is like streetwear, more modern, a little bit cool, like whatever. So we partner with restaurants that may not have that aesthetic, but we transform it so that it's to our liking and to what our customers would like, right?
Okay.
Buy shirts. So the reason why I brought that up was because we actually just made a shirt where we had negative Yelp and TripAdvisor reviews on the back of the shirt. Guess what happened?
What happened?
It got caught on, for us, it's called BlogTO, right? So it was on BlogTO, which is like one of the biggest like city guide like websites.
Okay. So like
for Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah, and also Breakfast Television. They also caught on with that. So it was like a post that the restaurant posted of our shirt, and it appeared on TV, and it appeared on BlogTO.
That's awesome.
Sold out.
That's awesome.
So that was amazing. So it's funny that you just mentioned negative reviews, because I think like any press is good press, in my opinion, right? Absolutely. But also to touch upon negative reviews, I think as a business owner, as a restaurant owner, you should always reply to negative and positive reviews, right? Totally. Equally. Don't just isolate positive reviews, or don't just isolate negative reviews. Just like respond to every review without emotion, right? Totally. Like we're trying to take the emotion out. But it's important because that's one part of building your community, is making sure that people know that you're hearing them, and then making sure that you're making improvements like all the time, right? Like change is always good, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah.
I'm sorry to cut you off here, Ray, but I think that I want to kind of touch upon that a little bit, and that's what we were talking about earlier in the conversation about, like, those online communities meeting like offline communities, right? Yeah. So, I mean, super interesting with the way that you started with EatNMingle. And I want to get into this a little bit because I watched some of your videos, and it sounded like when EatNMingle first got started, you were dealing with like a lot of strangers, right? Or at least like as you guys were scaling. So you would have like these offline events and you wouldn't know who you're meeting, right?
Yeah.
And so talk to us a little bit about, the differences between online communities and offline communities. And I mean, I know that is kind of like an ambiguous kind of question, but I'm just wondering, like, what are some of the things to look out for when, if I were a restaurant owner, for example, and I knew who my online community was, but I was looking to identify like an offline community or vice versa. Like, what are some of the things that I need to be looking out for?
Yeah, broad question, that's for sure. But I'm just gonna say, in my opinion, online communities are just as important as offline communities.
Okay.
And that a lot of times restaurants want to convert their online to offline, right?
Right.
But let's face it, you want to make sure you have an online presence and online community so that you can even convert.
Totally.
Right? Like that's the end game. So it's better to have both than just to have one. Right?
Absolutely.
And because we're in this age where we're using social media as one of the biggest marketing tools for businesses, it's like crucial nowadays to have a presence on social media, right?
Yeah.
But what I think is, I think both online and offline communities are built should be built pretty much the same by a restaurant. So it's really about, you have to nurture your community, you have to love them, and you have to give them attention.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
A lot of times,
right?
yeah, right. Like that's how you build a community. I'll give you a direct, like, my personally, how I grew EatNMingle. What I realized after 5 years, what I realized after 5 years,
Only took
without
you 5?
identifying it, yeah, because I think Paloma actually like told me this, or like this is from feedback I got from my members.
Okay.
Really, Paloma is one. So it was about like the reason why the group grew, and the reason why like it was successful was because I was able to bring people together that wouldn't have ever met each other in the
Right.
first place,
Right.
right? But at the same time, the number one piece of feedback I got was that, Ray, you're just such a nice, welcoming person, and every time I come to one of your events, you're just so helpful and happy and so nice to me.
Right.
And you made my like experience with Meetup in general like a pleasant one, because
Right.
I've been to different events where like there's like some creeps, it's less organized. The people that I didn't get to know, things like that.
Right.
So when I was hosting events, I made sure that everyone, this is the type of person I am. And when they came through the door, I would hug them because I'm a hugger. And they would like go for a handshake, or they would go for like something else. I would just hug them.
Bring
Yeah,
it in.
man. Yeah, I would just hug them, and they're like, "Whoa, that's thanks." Like, oh, okay. Like, thanks for coming. Like, thanks. And I would like share a moment where like I would talk to them for a little bit, and
Right.
even there was a long line of people like coming into the restaurant at that time, I would still just like spend some time with them.
That's
right?
awesome, man.
And then I'd be like, "Thank you so much for coming," and then go. And then they would get seated, and at the same time, I made a point whenever I did an event. I never ate at an event.
Really?
Yeah. So
Interesting.
a signal of a successful event for me was that I didn't eat, because I spent most of my time making sure everyone got to know each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of times people are like, "Ray, why don't you eat? Like, what did you eat? Like, this is so good. Like, why haven't you eaten?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not hungry." But the real reason was I didn't have a chance to sit down.
Totally, dude.
Right.
Dang, man, that is a very like that's a what's the word I'm looking for? That's an admirable leadership quality, right? You know, for me, it's just like you're putting others in front of yourself. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, like, don't get me wrong, not that you weren't finding any value or joy out of, making those connections and developing those relationships. But, it's really, it wasn't just about like you having this experience to share. It's almost like you wanted EatNMingle to be a platform for other people to have a good time. Right.
Yeah. I found joy in their joy.
Right.
That's what happened. Like, I found joy knowing that I recommended this restaurant that they ate at, and they, every single dish, they're like, "Oh my God, Ray, like, man, this was such a good find. Like, thanks for introducing us to this place." Or like, "Oh my God, this dish is amazing," right? And like, for me to share that with the chef after the event,
Right.
for me to share like tidbits of feedback, positive, negative, like for me to be able to say like, these are like the really killer dishes that you just knocked out of the park, reconfirm everything with him, and also like, here's some things that I think you can change because I got this from 4 members, right? That mentioned this. Like, they took tremendous value out of that too. So, but I just found joy like just seeing people happy.
Totally.
Right.
Man.
And I think that's what kept me on my feet, like physically, like literally, because I just like didn't want to stop seeing people like enjoy themselves, talk, be acquainted with the person like on the opposite side of the table, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that was just the type of person I am, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was a great like aha moment. Like, oh great, like now I'm aware of it because people have been telling me that. And I was like, okay, well that's great. And so like the success came when like I realized that 70-80% of the people coming to my events were people who came to another event.
Right.
And also I had so many members that brought in their friends, like coworkers or friends out of town and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So you had a bunch of recommendations.
yeah, so they just brought him, and they're like, yeah, your events have always been great, and this is my cousin, and she just came from like this city, and I just wanted to like show her a good time. I'm like, okay, great, thank you so much for
Dang,
coming. Like,
man.
always appreciate it.
That's
Yeah,
that's the value part, man. And that's
right.
like where, you can make a boatload of money, but if you don't have that
Yeah,
second piece,
right.
it doesn't matter. And so you focusing on, you kind of you reverse engineered the equation a little bit, right? Where you said, you know what, I want to focus more on the value, the experience, the happiness, like the sharing, and then the money, the brand, the company, all that stuff is going to happen as a result of that, right? So
Yeah, like I wasn't even thinking about money or building a business,
at the
you
time,
know.
yeah.
Like at the time for like probably the first 2 to 3 years, I didn't think it would become anything,
That's
right? I was
awesome.
just a fun hobby. But, over time, like, yeah, that's what it became. And like I saw the opportunity and it made a lot of sense to me, right?
All right, so we talked about this earlier though. So we said like restaurants, they typically have, 2 to 3 months in the beginning to, really like get their business going, right? Like to,
Right.
identifying like who their tribe is, who their community is, and, kind of extrapolating from there. So, obviously not everybody has the luxury of, going to business for the first 2 to 3 years and, not generate very much money. So I'm curious, like, what are some practical tips that a restaurant owner or a food brand can do in order to, connect their online community to an offline community or vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many tips, but like practical and like generals, right? So
Sure.
I'll
Yeah.
start with
Your
a couple
choice. I
general
mean, yeah.
ideas,
Sure.
and I'll
Your
go like
choice.
super practical, like
Cool.
actionable things you can do today.
Sweet.
So number one is I would say like you need to be very consistent and you need to tell your tale, right? So consistency in terms of starting. Oh, actually, this wasn't recording then, but like we're talking about how usually nowadays, or maybe usually nowadays, restaurants have like this story to tell, right? Whether it's like they're making food from their childhood, from their culture, back home,
Right.
whatever, they have
Right.
something sincere that they want to share with people. So that's something that I truly believe should be at the forefront of pretty much all restaurants, because that's what makes you different and what makes you unique, right?
Totally. Totally.
So you should share that and you should be consistent with that. So, and then what mean by consistency is you have it so that when people go to your Instagram page or Facebook page, or go and dine in, the experience should be exactly the same.
Mm,
And what I mean by that again is how I see your restaurant shouldn't be different from each different platform, right?
totally.
Like I shouldn't see like, oh, you're having it's like a nightclub atmosphere ish kind of thing on Instagram. But on Facebook, you're showing me photos of only like someone flipping stuff in the kitchen,
Right.
right?
Right.
It should be like uniform, like I'm flipping burgers in the kitchen, I'm serving burgers in the dining room,
Right.
and like my staff is like always smiling and super happy, and I'm showcasing this staff on Instagram, right? And I'm making sure that all the information I provide, like business hours, whether they're changing or not, um, our website, whether we're on like the meal delivery programs, like all that information should be all the same all the time,
Yep.
consistently through all platforms, right?
Yep. Yep.
So you should just be on top of all these things and you should tell one tale. So your tale should be where you're from, why you're making the food,
Yep.
right?
Awesome. That's awesome.
So I would say that would be number one, because you just have to be consistent and you have to be authentic throughout,
Yep.
right? The second thing I would say is that maybe in terms of let's talk about like social media, for example.
Sure.
So when you're talking about social media, when you create a post, I think each post should invoke some sort of insight, right? And should be able to be shared, right?
Okay.
So the content should be shareable, and also in each post there should be some sort of insight.
Okay.
And
What do you mean by
I
that?
would also recommend you prevent posting about promotions,
Okay.
right? I think there's a different platform that you can post about promotions. For example, like emails,
Hmm.
right? I don't know about you, but I receive a lot of discounts, sales, coupon, Groupon things on my email. I'm so used to seeing that stuff.
Hmm.
And sometimes I do click because I like those brands, right?
Right.
So if you're a restaurant and you're promoting like a discount or a promotion, whatever, I would say email it.
Interesting.
Right? Reserve for email. And then because if you use social media as a selling tool, you're not using it as a social tool, right?
Totally.
Right. So Instagram should be used as a thing where you're providing insight into your business,
Okay.
right? So right. So you're telling your story, right? Through videos, great photos, right? But also, the one thing is don't be shy about sharing like your knowledge for your craft, right?
Totally.
So let's take it back to your burger example. Maybe you're a master burger maker.
Right.
So your post could be,
eater. I eat
oh,
like.
you are, okay, perfect. Me too. This is why we bonded. I don't know if you understand, but it's like we didn't have to tell each other, but we just knew.
I got you, bro.
Yeah, we got okay, good. So let's take it back to the burger example. So it could be like your first a post could be like it's 2 a.m. Where do you get your beef?
Right.
Right. So that invokes, it's very it kind of entails, it's like implicitly saying like we get our beef in a better place.
Right.
Or you can get your burgers here at 2 a.m.
Totally.
Right? So your next post could be like, we get our beef, it's triple grade A Canadian beef, like, and we only use prime.
Right.
Right? You're not necessarily selling, you're telling your knowledge, it's like you're sharing knowledge.
Totally.
Right? The next post could be like telling how the importance of making like the caramelization, the Maillard effect on a burger patty, and why it's important that why you use a griddle instead of using a grill.
Right.
Right. For example, why you smash your burgers versus why you don't smash them.
Man, that's
right?
super interesting.
So these are the things that like I think are more interesting.
Totally.
Tricky words.
Totally. No, but you're right.
They're more interesting.
Absolutely. And it's like, and again, I always, because I feel like I got two sides of my brain. So I always go back to the art and science example, but it's just like, reasons like you made practical as a restaurant owner, right? You have made practical business decisions or choices based off of either your passion or what's best for your diner, right?
Right.
And so if you said like, hey, like I'm sourcing my beef from this farmer in Vermont or, from the, you know what I mean? Like that's like something that, I mean, number one, it tells me like you care about your craft, right? But number two, like I'm learning something. I'm like, I didn't even know Vermont had cows,
Yeah,
so it's just like all of a sudden, that experience, that burger, and it's a talking point also, right? So when we're talking about community building and my cousin's in town and I'm like, dude, we got to go to this place over here because their burgers are from freaking Vermont. And I didn't even know Vermont had burgers. I didn't know they had cows. Like all of a sudden we got something to talk about. And when we walk in, we can ask the waiter about the experience. I maybe want to talk to the chef about why they did that. That's super fascinating that you did that, and something easy and practical that I'm sure like a lot of restaurant owners would love to do. Right. Would love to.
Yeah. I mean, restaurants are really, really a business of like a sensory business, right? You need to be able to taste, smell, touch everything, right? Totally. And that's what you need to evoke when you're dealing with social media, right? That's basically telling your tale, right? So you want to make sure that, so if we take like an offline first-time visitor to your restaurant and they just so happen to stumble into your restaurant, right? They immediately get to see, they get to taste, they get to touch, they get to smell everything off of like first bat. You don't need to tell them anything, right?
Right.
You just need to be over hospitable,
right?
Like me as a host, right? Make sure their experience is like crazy, like over service, right? That is your job as a restaurant. It's a funny thing because I recently went to a restaurant. I go to like restaurants like almost every day.
Right.
So recently I went to a brand new restaurant in Toronto, and I loved it because from the very first time I went into the restaurant, first of all, when I called in the restaurant and they picked up their phone.
Awesome.
And I was like, actually, can I make a reservation? They're like, absolutely. I'm like, today though. They're like, sure. I'm like, okay, bless. Okay, that was lucky. And then later on, I find out that I had to change the time by like 30 minutes. So I called in again. Same person picks up. I'm like, hey, I made a reservation. Like, Ray. I'm like, can I change it for 30 minutes? Like, absolutely. I'm
Awesome.
like, you're the best. Thank you. And I like was like in complete shock. I go in and they're like, hey, thanks for coming. You're Ray, right? And I'm like, yes.
That's
Like,
awesome.
recognize your voice. I'm like, I don't know if that's a good thing. So they bring us in, and immediately when we sat down, we sat at the kitchen counter.
Right.
And then immediately the chef, like one of the chefs turns around. It's like, hey guys, thanks for coming.
That's
I'm
awesome.
like, thank you. I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thanks for turning around, right? And throughout the whole service, it was sort of like this guy. Okay, this was weird. So this guy, he was like making pizzas. Like
Right.
there's a pizza oven, there's a dedicated pizzolo, a pizza
Okay.
maker. He turns around. I don't know why. He turns around. He's like, I'm like, I need to order pizza. But like that guy was just like giving me a head nod. And I'm
Totally.
like, okay, acknowledging me for something, right?
Totally.
I'm like, man, I feel like I have a bond with that guy now, right?
Yeah.
And throughout the whole thing, it's just like the chef is like, hey, how did you like the dessert? Right? Sorry, we were like really slammed. I wanted to ask how your appetizer was. I'm like, man, it was great. Thanks for checking out, you know?
Yeah.
And the whole time, like, I was like, this is what a restaurant should be, right? Whether you are a burger shack, if you're a fast.
Uh-oh. Ray, did I lose you? Ray? Oh, I don't know what. Sorry about that, Ray. You there? Hello? Can you hear me? You can't. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Still no?
Yeah.
There you go.
No, I can hear. I can
Okay.
hear.
All right. Sweet.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Sorry about that, brother.
No worries.
So you were just wrapping up. You were telling me that
Yeah.
that's how every restaurant should be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think out of everything, like what I learned from EatNMingle and hosting, it's sort of like I think every restaurant owner should play host, right? And they should
Totally.
train their staff to play host. And I think that's what makes a like your dining experience memorable.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
so would you directly translate that then to like a successful event then, right? So if like for a restaurant we're looking to do like kind of collect their online community or their offline community, a specific event, it boils down to just making like what again consistency, making sure that the experience like inside is one that you would want to tell your friends about and come back to, right?
Exactly.
Yep. And
Exactly. Yeah.
if you think about it, each time that you go and dine out, that's an event in and of itself, right? It doesn't have to be like a special party or occasion, but the idea is that, normally somebody has discovered you online and that journey needs to be consistent so that once they get inside, right, that event, that time is, all of those things that we kind of talked about, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Awesome, dude. Well, I am running into some internet connectivity issues.
Wait, let me give you one last tip.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
This tip can be used for any business.
Okay.
And it applies to social media. I think it's important because it's something I recently started doing that I don't know why I didn't think of. And it has to go directly with engagement, right? Like working with, how do you show that your online community that you're engaged with them? Well, essentially what you do is when you have a comment, right? Maybe I'll ask you this. When you get comments on your posts, like what do you usually do with them?
So I am really bad at responding, but typically, and this, okay. Oh, dude, I'm gonna give you practical. Okay.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah.
If I'm super busy,
okay,
I will do something that I'm ashamed of, which is I will either like it or love it or do something that feels not like very invested.
Right.
And then when I have time, what I love to do is go back and have like a deeper, kind of connection, right? And
Right.
the reason why I say that I don't like doing that is I have learned that if someone comments on one of your posts and you don't respond for like 24 hours or whatever it is, it's
Right.
almost like someone walking up to you in your face and asking you a question and you completely blowing them off, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what but so sorry to cut you off, but yes, that is typically what I do.
No, that's great. Yeah. I mean, the 100% you should do that. 100%. Not blow them off.
Right. Well, that's all.
Give them a heart
Yeah, give them a heart. Give them a love, right? Yeah. Say something.
Yeah. I would say reply. Obviously, reply within like a 4-hour window.
Okay.
We can get into all the like the technicals of that down the road, but I would say like if you want to like really grow your community and you want to show that you're listening, I would say you use the comments, right? Comment section of every post that you've ever created as your tool to create your next post.
Interesting.
So basically, like when you propose, like every post, like I said, should have insight and should be shareable, right? That means the picture is like crazy great. It's like a close up of the burger patty, like with its juices, and you know what's great. You leave in the comments, where do you get your beef at 2 a.m., whatever. And people are like, I get mine at McDonald's, or you get mine whatever. And then your next post could be like, you know why we're different from McDonald's? Blah, 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 blah. Right? So it's like indirectly, like you don't have to mention the person, but you can.
Right.
Right. So we got the answer, blah, blah. But this is why we're different from McDonald's.
Totally.
Right.
Or it could just be going. You're keeping the conversation going. Which is that's awesome, dude. So, okay. All right, Ray. So before we hop off, man, I want you to talk to us a little bit about some of the ways that, EatNMingle is this awesome community. You're doing some really cool stuff. So how can people, find you, get involved with EatNMingle? Talk to us about how they can engage with you.
All right. So number one is follow me on Instagram, 100%. So it's EatNMingle on Instagram. So eat the letter N and then mingle.
Sweet.
You can go onto our website, which is EatNMingle.com.
Okay.
Or you can join our meetup group, which is EatNMingle on meetup.com.
Awesome, dude. And so, for everybody that watches this video later, I'm going to include links to all of Ray's profiles, and you're definitely going to be able to get involved with EatNMingle if that's what you want to do. I would love though, Ray, like in the community, if anybody that watches this video later has some questions, if you would maybe make yourself available for the next like 24 to 48 hours in the comment section.
Absolutely.
Definitely bless us with like a bunch of information. I know that there's like more stuff we can get from you. So
yeah, for sure.
Dude, this is so great. Like we're going to have another conversation.
Yeah, I know we veered off of community sometimes.
Totally.
It's just sometimes I just like get stuck into like one column, and I'm just like, I want to talk about these things too. So let me try to cram these in. But I know we have a timeline, and I never follow timelines. So yeah. So I can talk like forever about this stuff. So.
No, dude, this was great, and again, like I love that you were just like yourself, and you talked to this thing that you're passionate about, right? And that's I think what I want mostly to come out of. Well, not mostly. That's what I want to come out of all these conversations is like. Food is a thing that unites our tribe, right? The things that, you and I have in common. And as a result of that, we're going to find all these auxiliary things that we love about each other, that we like about each other. And that's when you and I get to build a relationship, and our community all of a sudden is a whole lot bigger.
Exactly.
So like much love. This is awesome. I'm going to be posting this in the group, and definitely if you guys have any other questions for Ray, feel free to comment. Definitely follow him on EatNMingle, or on Instagram specifically. His EatNMingle page is crazy with delicious foods. I like stalk it every day. But yeah, man, this is great. And we'll be in touch, Ray. All right.
Well, thanks, Terrence.
Thank you, my brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, Bye. Man.